So, Glenn, welcome to the call. Fantastic to be spending some time with you. Really appreciate the opportunity to speak to you about some aspects of lean construction. You've had a long career in lean construction, in consulting, in academia. So perhaps you could give our listeners, viewers, just a little snapshot of your history, how what you've achieved over a really successful long career.
Uh, well, I got involved in construction first as a construction as a pipe fitter's helper in the Houston Ship Channel, and
Wow.
uh, and but they didn't let me. I liked it. I liked working outside. I liked working with my hands. I liked making things that you could see, right, and getting that kind of almost quick feedback, right.
Yeah.
And I liked the working with the people that I worked with, and they were kind to me and good and helpful, and so I eventually got into construction engineering, and I was on an olefins project with a joint venture of Conoco and Monsanto south of Houston, and that was in about 1978, and the project was struggling, and they changed the project manager twice, and on the third project manager came on, and he had not been a project manager before, but he had the wit to understand that, if he's told me about this later, to understand that he had about 6 weeks, right, to make a difference, or he was going to be three of number four of four. And so he went off to the first of, I think there were three in total, uh, conference on construction productivity at the University of Texas. And he came back with four consultants in tow. Two of them were civil engineering professors at the University of Texas, and two became good friends of mine subsequently, Greg Howell and Mike Caston. And they had worked together in various places around the world for several years before I got involved in that trio. At any rate, it was an opportunity to really look at construction from the perspective of someone trying to make it better, right? As opposed to just trying to complete the project,
Yeah.
right? And so I was appointed, even though I had a real job. I was appointed to be the coordinator for the consultant team and manage access and those kinds of things, right? And I learned a lot. I learned a lot, and we didn't have any systematic approach. I must confess. I think each of us had something we wanted to try, and we tried them all.
Mm.
But most of it worked. And I think it mostly worked because we started by asking the crafts, well, what's causing you delays,
Mhm.
right?
Yeah.
And and they told us. And we went and talked to Howard Peak, was the new project manager. And we went to his office, Greg and I did, and Greg Howell, and we reported what they had said. And one of the things they said was that half the time they went to the tool room, they didn't get what they asked for. And Howard elevated. That could not be true. I've spent $3 million on small tools. All right. And we said, hey, you're shooting the messenger.
Yeah.
And
Right.
how about we go over and talk to the warehouse superintendent who's responsible for tools, right? Tool distribution. He says, not only do I not mind, I insist that you get this straight. I'm calling Dave and telling him you're coming. And so we did. Oh, but then Greg, as we were leaving, he turned around and said, well, Howard, there must be some turn downs, right? What do you think the percentage might be? He thought about a millisecond and said, about a 1%. Okay. So we went and talked to this next guy, and we did the same thing happened, and we asked the same question. He said, "Oh, about 10%. Do you mind if we talk to the general foreman over the tool rooms?" "No, I insist that you do this. Wally, I won't, I'm calling Wally and telling him that you're coming." So we asked Wally, he got up to 25%, something like that, right? And then we said, "Well, then you mind if we go to a tool room and just observe what's going on?" Right? And we did. And we sat there for a while, and we kind of noticed, definitely a trend, and it wasn't a good one. And so we stayed for an hour and just counted, and the turn down rate was 47%. So that taught me a huge lesson. You know, typically, unless you take steps to make it different, the further you are away from the direct work, the less you know about what's actually happening.
And there's clearly a lot of assumptions and a lack of communication, obviously, between areas, between leaders, and people assuming that problems are not as bad or even perhaps not even existent. They're not aware of them. So the work that you've been doing is obviously helping to uncover a lot of that. I suspect that some of our listeners might not even really be familiar with the concept of lean construction. So could you maybe explain for us what the core principles of lean construction are?
Well, there might be different opinions about this, but I think there's some general consensus. The fundamental principles are respect for people and pursuit of continuous improvement, and the one leads to the next, right? And respect for people is obviously includes being courteous, respectful, right? But also in committing to helping everyone working in a project or on a company to become all they can be. So to steal from the U.S. Marines punchline, right? And and so to build capability, right? And so that's the fundamentals of lean. Uh, there's
Yes.
lots of different. So go
Yeah,
ahead.
sorry. I was just going to say, I mean, there's, that those core principles of treating people well, and respectfully, and helping everyone to be the best version of themselves, help them to
Mhm.
excel at their respective roles. I guess as we look at the construction industry as it stands, whether we're talking about Australia or the United States or anywhere in the world, what do you see are the challenges facing them? I mean, are they successfully doing those principles in construction at the moment from your point of view?
Well, some are for sure. I mean, it's a different picture than it was in 1993 when we formed the first international conference on construction, on lean construction. So, and, and I've so in 1993, I co-founded the International Group for Lean Construction, which is primarily an academic body, right? Because it's focused on theory and development of methods and testing them in real life and that kind of thing. And then in 1997, Greg Howell and I formed the Lean Construction Institute in the United States. And I have another story that if you can bear with me to tell you about that. Okay. So we had, I created something in concept or about 1991 called the last planner system. And it's a method of planning, planning and controlling production, right? And and we used that very, very successfully on a project that was in deep trouble. It was a project in Venezuela. It was for Petróleos de Venezuela, the national oil company. And it was a big revamp of the Cordon refinery. And it's about 1.2 billion in 1994 dollars. So a lot of money.
Hmm.
and big. They had 10,000 people working on the site when we arrived. 10,000. And they, I'm confident that they didn't have enough that work that enough work for 10,000 people.
Yeah.
So it became a, it became a problem in just maintaining discipline, right? So so we applied the last planner system and some other tools, and we were able to, though the project was way over budget and way over schedule, behind schedule, with a year to go to schedule completion. And they the accountants for the managing partner of the three major U.S. Engineering companies, Bechtel, Foster Wheeler, and Kellogg. Kellogg was the managing partner. They they estimated that in order to come where to have any chance of making the scheduled date, that they needed 10,000 more people.
Wow.
And, no, 8,000, I'm sorry,
Yeah.
8,000 more people. But fortunately for them and for us, there weren't 8,000 more people who could walk and chew gum at the same time because everyone was working.
Yeah.
Uh, I later learned that one of the problems was there was a, a, a strong political union and for trade workers, and they had somehow managed to get in the agreement that you couldn't let go an electrician and then hire another one.
Mhm.
And so basically, people just piled up, right? So they were shooting themselves in the foot, and that obviously wasn't good practice. Um, well, let me no, okay. I won't tell you about the project itself because that's another story. But
Mhm.
but we were successful,
Mhm.
and flying back on from Venezuela back to the U.S. Greg and I had a few cocktails and began to share thoughts about, well, what had happened. And I contend that I said, but he contends that he said.
One
And
of you
so
said.
one of us said it for sure, and said, "Look, we're at high risk of having repeat customers for the same service
Mhm.
because we know how to." And this was our like fourth project in a row that was saving a bad project, and
Mhm.
um, And so we know how to do it, but we're not doing very much to make sure that our clients learn how to do what we did for them,
Mhm.
right? And so that we were influenced in that persuasion by a book by if I can remember it, Flawless Consulting, Peter Peter Block.
Mhm.
And he had this strategy or framework that said that consultants can have a pair of hands. They do not have any peculiar capabilities, but they just need more of what they can do.
Mhm.
And subject matter expert who comes in, solves problems, right? Leaves a report, walks away. But he said that what he tries to do and what he likes doing and thinks provides the most value is to do what Greg and I were talking about, and that's to enable your customer to do what they ask you to do. Right.
So,
So, so,
in
so we
terms of, I
formed the
guess, yeah,
Lean
sorry.
Construction Institute to do that.
Hmm.
Okay.
Yeah. So, and that was back in 1993 that you formed it.
That would have been 1995 for that project. But
Oh,
it took us 2 years to get the wheels under the Lean Construction Institute. But so
yeah.
1997 it was formed.
Fantastic. So, I guess since forming that and recognizing, that it's about educating the clients that they can do it for themselves as well, not just to rely on you to come in and do that. What other common challenges that you've seen, that you've identified, that most construction projects that are not following a lean construction methodology are running into? What are their common challenges?
Well, name something. I mean, they don't all have the same challenges, and there's obviously a range of performance,
Mm,
but it's typical that they would be they're struggling to complete on time, struggling to hit budgets,
mhm.
struggling to keep people safe, struggling to produce quality defect-free products, right? And so,
So, in terms of the principles addressing that, how does the last planner system help people to get their projects back on track? As you mentioned, that you'd had with Greg success going into really troubled projects 4 times, fixing those, and you'd identified a strategy. So, how does the last planner system help a construction project get itself back on track, get back on
okay,
budget?
yeah. Okay, well, it was formed with the intent to improve the reliability of workflow as the release of work between specialists, right? And we thought that if that didn't happen, it would be very difficult to be successful at anything, right? And the extent to which it didn't happen would be a driver of your performance, right? And so the measurement that I came up with was a very simple one. Did you do what you said you were going to do? And that backs into and is built on this idea of reliable promising. And so we asked the, the, the trades and their direct supervisors to commit one to another each week what work they're going to complete during that week, the coming week, right? And so it's not just doing something, and they have a hand in deciding what that is, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and making it ready. So one of the features of the last planner is the look ahead process, or might call it the make ready process. Just so you don't assume that you have everything when you don't leave it to the last minute, assuming that everything's going to be there that you need, right? And but there's a systematic examination of those constraints. There's some categories for it, obvious ones, and information, materials, equipment, and so forth. And design, of course.
Mm-hmm.
So if you measure the percent plan complete, and we did that on a number of different projects prior to uh, before really trying it out, right? But trying to make it better. And we found it very not uncommon for the percent plan complete to be 50% in that area, right?
Yep.
And so that means half the time. And I think that my speculation about that is that it's obviously disruptive because you can't do what you said you thought someone thought you were going to do it in the plan, right, in schedule.
Mm.
But also it discourages people from depending upon each other, right? And so there's a tendency to disregard that interaction and to kind of go back into self-protective mode, right?
Yeah.
Uh, and when that happens, people stop talking. They're not collaborating, and that can't be good.
No. No. So and it strikes me that that would be one of the challenges is getting the target, a reliable goal identified. Is that one of the challenges for people, that either they've been assigned an unrealistic target or they themselves are setting an unrealistic target?
It- Sometimes, of course, yeah. I mean, I think that one of the things that we try to get away from in the lean approach to construction is to plan in greater detail as you get closer to the work. Okay.
Yeah.
So, right. So I was trying to predict a 3-year project with 40,000 pages of schedule, you know, you cannot you cannot possibly make that to the day.
Mm.
Uh, and you shouldn't, and why should you? You can't know enough in advance, right?
Mm.
So, but you don't need to. I mean, I think what we can do is we can block it out in the major phases and specify in time the intersection of those phases, because you need to be able to order materials, have labor brought in, get equipment, right, all that. And so, but that doesn't require a huge amount of scheduling, right? It relies a lot on experience.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then as you go forward, as you approach a phase, you plan that phase at the next level of detail, right? And that's done collaboratively with the people that are going to directly supervise and execute that work. Right?
Yeah.
And so they're already getting their hands in it, right?
Yeah.
And that ownership is hugely important. Mm.
So you were providing some examples of when you were starting out and yourself and Greg and having great success of turning around projects. I guess now as you look at the work, several decades on, and you look at other people, practitioners, people you've taught the principles. Are there other examples of more contemporary projects that you weren't involved in, but that your proteges have taken these principles and had success?
Oh yes, all over the world. I mean, it's not my private property.
Mm.
In fact, I've never made a dime out of the last planner system, but
Yeah,
I want to give it away. I
yeah,
want people to use it, right?
yeah,
I do have a concern that it be properly done, and understood. And so every 4 or 5 years, I produce a current process benchmark for the blast planner system. And I'm just at the starting point for that next cycle.
right.
And that's to encourage two things. One is to uh, behave like you say, right? And so we can always learn more. There are a lot of bright people in the industry, and they're inventing things all the time. And so it would be surprising if you didn't need to change it, right? In some degree. I think the fundamentals, the structure and the principles, I think stay the same. But
And that document that you create that becomes publicly available every time you release it,
yes, yes.
and where would
Most the
people
most
be able
current
to?
Well, the most current one was published in the Lean Construction Journal, and it's would be in 2020, the 2021 edition. So if you go into the leanconstructionjournal.org, you can find it.
Okay.
And there's a special segment for process benchmarks, and it's in that segment.
So the project, the process of the last planner has been, as you said, been implemented successfully, countless times around the world. It's had um, significant impacts on projects, helping them to stay closer or be on budget, on time, and overcome some of these major challenges. With that in mind, why do you think there's perhaps, I don't know if it's resistance or still not more people, more construction bodies taking up the last planner system? Why are not more people using a system that's proven to be as effective as it is?
Well, it's hard to know how many people are using it and how
Mhm.
many people aren't. Actually, I have no way of knowing in any detail.
Mhm.
Um, I think some people may. Um, I mean, I think you're probably familiar with the concept of paradigms.
Mhm.
Okay, so that's a notion of that seeing is believing, right? And so, believing is seeing, rather.
Yeah.
Believing is seeing. And because what we see and what we understand to be possible in the world depends upon fundamental assumptions about the nature of that world and the nature of construction if that's the world you occupy, right? And I think that we're fortunate as a species that there's a certain percentage of populations, human populations, who are open to reasoning and evidence, right?
Mm.
And but that's not the whole population, right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so I think what we've done is we've seen we see it's obviously spotty too because there's more emphasis and more activity in different areas and different portions of the construction industry itself, right? It's a complex beast, and um, so there are different ways to move forward. One is to move in each of those, say, heavy civil, industrial, infrastructure, residential, housing. All of those could be made foci of the deliberate intents to improve, right?
Mhm.
And so that's what we're trying to get to now. So what I think we've done is I think we've taken advantage of the um, the kind of early adopters, right? And uh, but obviously there are parts of the world that haven't even heard about lean, right? Although it's becoming less and less common, that's for sure. Or
Mm.
they may not know very much about it, right?
Yeah.
So we're trying to deal with exactly those kinds of constraints. But that's
Yeah.
a huge job.
Well, it's one of the reasons that the Orbiz team was so keen to speak to you and appreciate your time and insight, because we feel that certainly here in Australia that there's not enough awareness of the last planner system. So we're trying to
Hmm.
share these insights and let people know there are alternative strategies that are working around the world and have been really successful. But as you say, perhaps it's a bit like the Roger Bannister 4 minute mile process. Like, until people recognize it's possible to do it a different
Yeah.
way, they're not seeing it. So that we want to make sure that we're raising their awareness of this and helping them to recognize there is a process, and these lean principles can certainly help change the direction. But it sounds along the way that there's a few aspects that you've spoken about. One, that when you were getting going, it was really just a willing to try things, being open, being more agile, and having great communication. Would you suggest that those are fundamentals that organizations, companies are going to have to embrace if they want to make this sort of change?
Oh, I think so. I mean, and I think it's there's very practical reasons for it. I mean, as I said earlier in this talk, that if you're not collaborating, you're heading for trouble, right? Because if you're just telling people what to do, and that's one of the paradigms, right? Is I have this hat and I tell people what to do, right?
Yeah,
But that's a waste of great opportunity, right? And doesn't build very good camaraderie, right? So when you need them, they may not be there, right?
yeah, yeah, yeah. They're
So
not going to be in the trenches with you when it gets to the
yeah, when it
tricky
gets tough,
times.
right?
When the going gets tough, they'll might take off. So, in terms of, as we come to the end, Glenn, and we do really appreciate your time. Um, Final thoughts or advice for the professionals in the industry, people working in this space, about practical things that they could think about or apply or do that would make their life, their project, and the lives of all the people perhaps that they are supervising and supporting better. What would you like to say to people in the field?
Well, what comes to mind is that you really want to facilitate learning during the execution of the work, right? Because if you wait to do it when you have time, you won't have time, right? And the last planner, one of its strengths is that you do a measurement every week of whether you were able to do what you said you were going to do, right? And then the intent is, although it doesn't always happen, is to go investigate that instance, that act, that failure, and see what you can learn from it. And the same sometimes applies to successes. You may be able to do something much better than you thought you were going to be able to do, and go find out why, see if you can replicate it, right? But that means you have to use some of your capacity in order to learn, because that reduces the need for capacity going forward, right? But that's a step of faith, right? And if you don't have that mindset because of the world, you've been raised in a world where that's not the case, right? Then it's hard to persuade you.
Yeah, yeah. If you're not going to be open to that, so that willingness to learn, and I guess it's a more scientific approach, if you like, that scientists obviously in their pursuit of breakthroughs are willing to fail multiple times as they learn and keep getting more knowledge, and then apply that learning and keep working towards getting a better outcome.
Mm-hmm. No, that's a good point. Yeah. I might just note that in I guess it's closing, uh, having a lot of fun.
Yeah.
But the last planner is not the only method in the lean toolbox by
Mhm.
far. Okay? And I've just published a book, or it should be out, but I haven't heard from the publisher that it is out,
Yep.
on what's called target value delivery.
Mhm.
And so it's really a way of, I think every project sets targets. We don't always set them very well, but for value, and that's do you succeed in realizing the the objective of the project, why you had the project in the first place, right? And then, of course, then you can set a cost for that based upon how you value the beneficial uh, uh, benefit of having achieved that, right? In advance. That's what we call an allowable cost, right? And then the only other test for the allowable cost is, are you willing and able to pay it, right?
Mhm.
And if you're thinking about a project whose objective requires more than you're willing and able to pay, go do something else. I
Mhm.
think, and that's very simple, but it's very fundamental,
Mm.
right? Uh,
Well, that's great. Well, we'd love to know when the book is released and available, and we'll of course promote that out to our network here for you as well, because I think it would be invaluable for people to get a copy of that. So we look forward to reading that.
yeah, I appreciate it.
Well, Glenn, thank you so much for your time, for your insights, and I think, on behalf of everyone in the construction world, thanks for the gift of the last planner system. The generosity to create a tool and give it away without the aspiration to be making money for it, but simply to help improve the quality of people's lives and outcomes is a true gift to the world. So we thank you very much for doing that and for your time today. Thanks for being with
Yeah,
us.
you're welcome. Thank you.